It's the Saturday before Mother's Day, and so of course I'm thinking about Father's Day. No, just kidding. One of the things I'm doing for Mother's Day is I'm making it so our hoses don't leak. And as I was doing this, I'm like, I'm enjoying doing this, and I'm a dad, and I really like that the hoses aren't gonna leak. I realized that this little project I'm doing includes probably half a dozen good little Father's Day gifts that you could give if you're thinking about Father's Day 2025. Before you start thinking to yourself, why is this dad full of himself, not worrying about mom on Mother's Day? Well, the Mother's Day gift is kind of already in place, and we'll actually start with Mother's Day gift ideas. If you don't know what to get someone for Mother's Day, flowers is always a good one, and if it's a living pot, even better. This lilac is basically done with its blossoms, but it was a Mother's Day gift for our mom something like 5 years ago, but we didn't have a place to plant it. This year, part of the Mother's Day gift was finally putting this plant in the ground up here on our hillside. Sorry for all the car noise. But if you don't have a place to plant a plant like this, you don't have a yard for it, get a plant that you can put in a pot. One that lives in its own little pot for years and years like this one did is a gift that keeps on giving. If you buy cut flowers, those things die in a few weeks, maybe even less. If you put it in a pot, it can live for years. So those are the Mother's Day ideas before I move on and talk about these Father's Day ideas. So I go out to plant that lilac, and of course the lilac needs water. Get out my hose, start spraying it. The first thing I notice is it's dripping water all over the place. The hose goes all down my pants, and now I'm soaked. So I think, well, we got to make it so these things don't leak. Father's Day gift number one actually could also be a Mother's Day gift, especially if she's a gardener. You can get a little hose squirter thing like this that turns the water on and off. There's a lot of different settings. I think this one was $5 or $6, maybe even less at Walmart, and it's working great. So if you have a gardener, get him a hose thing. But if the hose is leaking, then you've got a project on your hands. Good for Mother's Day or Father's Day. So when I have a leaky hose, usually it's leaking from this little joint here at the end of the hose into whatever it is that's attached, whether it's attached up to the spigot on the wall or your attachments here. This can be a very cheap and quick thing that anybody can do if you want to take the easy, quick route. And that's that often the thing that attaches on the end, you call this the wider female end, doesn't have a rubber washer in here. So you can go to the hardware store or on Amazon and you can just get rubber hose washers. You stick this thing in the end of the attachment or of the next hose, the female end of the hose where it goes connects to the wall or whatever, stick it in there. Then when you cinch it up tight, it compresses the gasket and it makes it so the water can't leak out, and all of a sudden it doesn't have a leak. Sometimes that's not enough though. Sometimes the threads on this thing are damaged, broken, squished, rusted, worn out, stripped, whatever. And so the only way to get that to really stop leaking is to replace this all together. And so then you look on Amazon, and the product that I've found, it looks like the exact same product is boxed up and sold by a lot of folks. So then you probably just want to go buy the one that comes in the proportions that you want. So I have 3 different hoses that I'm replacing the ends on. I got this one from GDIM brand, and it had 6 of them. But they look like this. It's an aluminum nut and a brass hose end. You stick them together and you fasten them onto the hose with these screws, and you cinch it in there tight, and you do it right, and then it does come with a rubber insert already, that hose ring or hose gasket, and so those can get on there tight and they don't leak. In order to install the hose end, the first thing you got to do is you got to get rid of this old one, and most of these come from the factory like really sealed on here, and that's not easy to like detach per se. So what you got to do is you got to cut it off, and you want a nice flush cut. That brings my next idea for a Father's Day gift. If you get a PVC cutter like this one, it's made for cutting pipes and hoses and a nice really flush angle. You can see it ratchets tight, and with each time I squeeze it, it gets tighter and tighter, and eventually it'll cut through. I'm going to show you how I do it with this hose though, because sometimes the hose will bend as you squeeze it, and you want to make sure it's a nice flush cut. That's the best way to guarantee that your joint between the hose and the new hose end is the tightest it can be. Sometimes the existing hose end will have a metal insert that extends into the hose a little ways, so I always back it off an inch or two from where the joint is. Now this is going to be hard for me to hold the thing and do this quite right at the same time. Let me try to set that up. Okay, you want it on there straight and flush, and squeezing it in. And what I do is once it actually starts to cut, then I ring around the outside. I will hold the end of the hose, and I'll just guide this around the outside, and it makes it a little bit of a straighter cut. But if that doesn't work, then I'll trim the end, as I'll show you in just a second. Well, just for demonstration purposes, this is not how I'd really usually do this, but I'll just keep squeezing till this goes through. And you'll see that this will leave a couple of, flared ends at the end of the hose. Okay, let's see. This is probably the best flush cut that I've ever made. So maybe I just learned a new technique. Maybe you just let the pipe squish, or the hose squish anyway, and it ends up being nice and straight. If you do have a little nub at the end that didn't cut off all the way, then I just take this thing, open it all the way. Oh, I should tell you, this one I think I got at Home Depot for like 12 or 13 bucks. They're still there. There's similar ones. It doesn't matter what brand you get, in my opinion, they're all about the same. Maybe if you get a fancy one, it'll come with higher quality steel on the blade, whatever, but 13 bucks, definitely not more than 18 bucks, at least in the United States. And so then, yeah, that's a good sharp blade there. So I just open it all the way, and I'll put it on the hose and use it to carve off the end, whittle off the nub if there is an extra nub. I don't really have a hand free to do that, so you get the idea. Just use this blade and carve that. And the next step is just to start putting these things on here. Now, I like to loosen up the screws on the outsides of these hose ends. And by the way, if you search hose ends on Amazon, you'll get this pretty quickly. I loosen up the screws first, and then I drop it onto the end here. I'm gonna have to loosen up just a little bit more. Oh no, I did. There we go. And then I slide it on. Now, you can put the insert in the end first, and then just unconnect this and open it all the way, but I think it saves a little bit more time. It's a little more convenient just to keep these things together. Slide them on, insert that, and then it's closer to ready to go. This next part needs two hands free, so I'm actually holding the phone between my knees right now, but you just stick this end into the hose. And if you've got a little muscle and some patience, you really can just muscle this thing in there and eventually it'll go, but that's difficult to do. This hose is pretty rigid. This brass metal wants to sort of cut into it a little bit. You don't want to damage it, so it'll make more leaks, obviously. So that gets to the next potential Father's Day gift, the heat gun. This is a heat gun. There's lots of different kinds. It basically, honestly, it's just a high power blow dryer, and I have seen these on Amazon for less than 20 bucks. This one I actually got at a thrift store, and heat gun's good for all kinds of things that you need to get hot. So frequent use is that they'll use them to heat up adhesives when you're talking about like gluing down a carpet or flooring. Also, I'll buy something that'll have a sticker on it, and I just don't like the way the sticker looks, and so you use the heat gun, you heat up the sticker, and then you can peel that sticker clean off without leaving behind a bunch of gunk. In this case, we're going to use the heat gun. Just turn it on here, and be careful, this is going to get hot, like literally hot enough to burn you just by the touch. A heat gun gets a lot hotter than a hairdryer gets, and it can actually burn you without touching you. You know, like your hairdryer, usually you'd have to like bump it against yourself before you get a burn. This thing, once it's hot, just touching that metal will definitely burn you, but even the hot air is hot enough to burn you, so you got to be careful with it. And yeah, I don't know if this brand is any good or not. I'm not saying it's good or not. I'm just saying that a heat gun can be a great Father's Day gift because there's a lot of uses for it, and it might not be something that your man was thinking of on his own to go ahead and get for himself. So turn on the heat gun, heat up the end of this, and then that's going to make this hose, it might expand a tiny bit, but it's not the expansion I'm worried about so much. It's just that it makes it pliable, and then once this stuff will really like move around when I squish it, then I can squish it onto the end of the hose connector. And I'm just using this on it has 2 power settings. I'm just using it on the high power, full power setting, because I don't want it to take a lot of time, and I don't think I need to be too delicate with this. That's probably enough time. So grab my hose end and just start poking it in there. This, you see, I'm having to rock it back and forth, but this is way easier to do now that it's warm than it was when it was cold. Another thing you might do is put a little bit of water in there, a little soapy water even, but I'm not going that far with this. I'm just heating it up and working it in. Now it takes some muscle, and that's another reason why this is a good project for a Father's Day thing, is that your dad probably likes to feel strong. He likes doing muscly things, and he feels good that he can get this done when he's done with it. So, and in total, it doesn't take a long time, and it makes a massive difference for just like knowing that you can use the hose anytime you want without getting water on your pants. So I'm going to keep squeezing this thing in, move it in gradually. I'll heat it up a little bit more, but I can't do it all on camera because it's going to take 2 hands. So, so you'll see it just before I'm done with this part of it. So pushing this thing in isn't always entirely easy, and so that brings me to the next Father's Day gift that's probably not on anybody's radar but ends up coming in handy. It's this little thing. This is called a swage. I got this one on sale at Lowe's. It was like 12 bucks, or no, it was normally 12 bucks, but it was marked down to like 8 when I got it. I don't know how much you'll pay for yours, but especially if you're willing to go on Amazon, you could probably get it even cheaper. And you see, this is different diameters of hoses and pipes. And so it's used for sticking inside the inside of a pipe and then helping wiggle it around to make it round again. And then also there's these angles. So if you're working with a really soft material, maybe copper, maybe something even softer, you can make a flare at the end of your pipe. Well, today I'm not using this to make a flare or round things out. I'm just using it to stick inside the end of my hose here. And then that gives me something really firm that I can push against so I don't have to be gripping these threads or whatever. And then the female end of these hose connectors is supposed to be able to spin free, so that makes it even harder to get a grip on it and squeeze it in. So then that's why my swage tool came in handy. So next Father's Day gift idea, swage tool. This can be done pretty inexpensively. All right, so I heated up the hose again, sticking the swage tool in there, and you see eventually it just sort of seats in, and then I can keep a grip here and I can push on this together. And if there's a hard part of this, this is the hard part, but I do believe this is something that anybody can do. It just takes a little bit of time and pushing, and you can see I'm getting it in there a little bit farther each time, and I'll keep pushing until the rubber end of this hose is as flush as I can get it against that brass. I'm gonna have to change my posture to do it though, so I can get it all the way in. So I'll stop that camera again. Okay, so I did heat it up again before I finished pushing that in there, and a little more heat made it a lot easier. And now I want to show you one of the reasons why this works so well to keep this from leaking at all. That is that this isn't just a straight piece of metal that's sticking in here. The insert actually has some indentations on it. You see how that doesn't go completely straight through. There's a dent in there. Well, I've taken apart one of the clamps so I can show you that on the inside of the clamp there's this ridge that squeezes in even tighter than the outside of the ridge. So you put the insert into the hose, and then the narrow part of that clamp fits right around the narrower part of the insert, and so it gets a really nice tight fit on there. Also, you know, if you use a heat gun, or whether you use a heat gun or not, you see how as I put the insert in there, it's stretched the hose. So now the hose is naturally going to, as this one as it cools, or even if you didn't heat it up, one that just sticks on there, it had to stretch out. It's going to stretch back down and constrict even more on this. So that's another thing that's going to make that a nice watertight fit. And now it's time to move the nut up to the end of the hose, tighten it in place, and then this upgrade will be all done. And but that does bring me to the last recommendation for a Father's Day gift, and that is a ratcheting screwdriver. Maybe your dad has a screwdriver, maybe it doesn't ratchet. Nice thing about ratcheting screwdrivers is that you can screw it in, and then as it ratchets, you don't have to take your hand off this. It can keep tightening as you go, and it ends up saving time. This one has a few other features that I do like. I like that it has so many micro clicks on the ratchet, it's a plus and a minus that it has this really wide handle. It's a plus, first of all, because there are extra bits that are stored in the end of this handle. So you can swap out this tip, and you can use it for flathead, square head, Torx head, whatever kind of different adjustment you need. I'm trying to one-handed take the end off to show you that there's other ends stored in here, but not able to do that one-handed right now. And then the fact that it's so thick means there's a mechanical advantage that happens when you're holding this thick thing, but you're spinning this narrow thing. It means you can put a lot more torque to torque something in tight, and that's going to come in handy as I torque in this hose end nice and tight. The disadvantage is that it means that when I'm trying to work in a tight space, I have to grip my hand around this fat handle, and so it just doesn't fit into a tight space very well. So I do still end up using my regular screwdrivers a lot of the time. Now, this one is the Cobalt brand that you see at Lowe's. I'm not saying this is the best brand or not. I'm saying it's blue, and I like blue. And most of my tools sit in the shelf most of the time. I'm not a professional. So if you're thinking about, well, which brand of tools should I get my dad? My opinion is, unless he's a professional who's using his tools all the time, that you should get him the color that he likes. If he likes red, get him a red one. If he likes orange, get him an orange one. Yellow and black, that bee stinger look, you know, get him a yellow and black one. For me, I like blue. And another idea about ratcheting screwdrivers, you know, if you go on YouTube, you can find all kinds of different ratcheting screwdrivers that have different pluses and minuses. I really enjoy watching Project Farm. That's one YouTuber. That YouTuber Project Farm is really good for people who like to be thrifty, because he'll compare the cost of different products, and then he'll do like some pretty scientific tests about which one works best or not. So he has a whole episode about ratcheting screwdrivers. I don't think this ratcheting screwdriver is in that episode, but if you have a dad who really likes techie stuff, and if he doesn't mind spending some money, you know, if he likes if he's a computer builder dad who doesn't mind spending money, then you can get a fancy one of these from Linus Tech Tips, another YouTuber, and that's a $70 screwdriver. I guess it's supposed to be really nice, but the idea that your dad will be like, oh, you knew that I like computer stuff and you bought me the fancy computer builders ratcheting screwdriver, he might like that even more. I personally feel like that's a little much to spend, especially when you can get something like this for like, they'll go on sale around Christmas time, sometimes for like 10 or 12 bucks, which is great. And then the rest of the year, it's probably only 16 or 17 bucks. But you know, there's sometimes reasons to spend that kind of money. I don't need to do that kind of thing. But yeah, so now I'm going to torque down that hose and finish this project, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to be able to water that lilac over there without getting my pants wet. So I'm going to move the nut up to the end, and I think the way this is made, it's supposed to fit basically all the way up against this end. For the dads out there, this part here is actual brass, so good for plumbing. This part here is aluminum, but it's painted aluminum, so hopefully the paint is going to make sure there's not any kind of weird metal interactions that cause corrosion here on the edge. But yeah, I'm just going to use my ratcheting screwdriver, and I'll cinch it down tight, and you'll see in just a second why this ratcheting screwdriver becomes handy. So at first, just use it like any other screwdriver. Then once it starts getting tight and I have resistance on the other end, I can just grip this thing, and you hear that ratchet click, click, click sound. Dads who like tools love that ratcheting sound. One of my tool buddies once accused me of making sexy ratcheting sounds at him. So that ratcheting sound is definitely appealing. It's a sound of efficiency. It's a sound of good mechanical engineering to make that ratchet happen. And it's the sound of me being able to torque this down as much as I want. I am able to torque these down, and so these screws completely seat. I can feel that it's like metal pressing against metal, not just squeezing the rubber anymore. So that's what I recommend doing, is just get this as tight as it can go. I'm not worried about it pinching so much that it's going to make a leak. I just don't think that's going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but yeah, I'm willing in this case to risk it. So nice and tight there. Now this hose end is on, and it'll be interesting to see if this thing thinks it has an excuse to start leaking on me. One more thing I'd like to say about this package of GDIM hose ends. The female ends do come with a rubber gasket in there that looks great, but also they didn't even advertise it, but they sent it with a few extra rubber hose gaskets. So always gotta love it when a company goes just a tiny bit of an extra mile, gives me a little bit more value for my dollar. This is the second box of these that I bought that has a total of 6 attachments in it, and both of them had the extra hose ends, so I just really appreciate that, and maybe your dad will too. Before I wrap up, a couple of questions. Do I have to have a heat gun for this project? No. Use water, hot water, or soapy water. Any of those will work. You can force it through. You can try to use hair dryer. I don't know if it would quite get hot enough, but it would help. It'd still be better than doing it cold. Do I have to have a flush cutter off? No, just use a knife. Use a sharp knife. Make it a nice sharp cut. And if it doesn't exactly go straight, just whittle it till it gets nice and smooth. Do I have to have a hose end? Of course not. It's just nice to be able to be squeezing your hose and have the water shut off when you want it to, instead of having to go back to the spigot again. Do I have to have a swage tool? No, you can just force it on with your hands. It'll work just fine. Do I have to have a ratcheting screwdriver? No. None of these are necessities, but all of them are luxuries, and they're things that your man might not be thinking of on his own. And like I said sort of near the beginning, you might be able to do this whole project just by getting some of these cheap little hose washers. Part of the test of how good these things are is going to be just like how easy it is to put them together. Can I just do this with my hands without having to cinch them tight with a wrench and still have them hold water? So I'm just going to like finger tighten this, right? Finger tight. And then if I come back and it's leaking, then I will then I'll cinch it down with, you know, like actually wrenching it with my whole hands. And then if that still it doesn't work, I'll tighten it even with a wrench. But now I'm going to go turn it on, and we'll see if it's dripping out of here. Okay, spot number one. Here at the end of this hose, there were a few like micro drips of water on there, so if you see a micro drip, that won't count, but this is fully turned on, as you can see, and the water's coming out the end, but it's not coming out of the hose connector Right now that was on a weird adjustment. It was straight between jet and mist. Here's on mist. So I can spray my mist out there, not dripping down the handle. Oh, the water's still coming out to the end. Change it to the jet setting. Now you can really blast stuff with this. Wahoo! And whether on or off, the hose is not blowing any water out down the back of it. Okay, so it's holding pressure. And then going back to the joint between the two hoses. Like I said, the micro drops here don't count because they were already here. In fact, it's funny because I just finished my hose project, but now it's started to rain. So you might see a few more drops gathering, but that's not leaking either, even though the hose is all the way on. So here I go to water my wife's beautiful lilac without getting any water where I don't mean it to go. I like this setting here when I'm watering stuff, shower, because it spreads wide and it doesn't, but it doesn't jet hard enough that it'll blast the water away. I've reseeded the grass right here, so it's just got a light layer of peat moss on top, so I don't want to blast that and have it wash away. But get back here to the element of the hour, the lilac that my wife loves so much. Give it the water that it needs without getting water on my pants. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy Mother's Day and Father's Day.